All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second NEUTC webinar. My name is Cole Fitzpatrick at UMass Amherst. I'm pleased to be joined today by Professor Song Gao, who's also in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. Before I kick it off for our presentation, I wanted to share some good news. So hopefully, by the end of this webinar, you may see some award notices from our director, Dr. Nodler. So putting his feet to the fire here with some pressure. Also excited to launch our website. So if you go to umass.edu/NEUTC, or our old link will still work, neutc.org, you'll see our new website that's hosted within the UMass framework. That one will be kept up to date. We'll add all the projects there, post future webinars and the like. So as with our last webinar, if you have questions, just go ahead and use the Q&A feature at the bottom. We'll probably take questions at the end, or interject if possible, or also feel free to use the chat function. We'll be monitoring both. So with that, I will toss it over to Professor Gao.
Hey. Thank you, Cole, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me for an introduction to my ongoing project on building an efficient and scalable cooperative for ride-sourcing drivers, abbreviated as COOP. This project is also part of a UMass Amherst initiative on public interest technology, aiming at leveraging technology in a socially responsible way. So my plan for today is to start off with an introduction to the public interest technology, also known as PIT initiative at UMass Amherst, with slides generously shared by Fran Berman, the director of PIT. I am one of the faculty fellows of PIT for the current academic year, and hopefully can do justice to the wonderful initiative in my presentation. I will then spend most of the time on my own research project with a PIT theme. I will start with the motivation for a co-op app for ride-sourcing drivers and state the project goal. I will then use an illustrative example to show that the proposed co-op program, the so-called COOP, can curb oversupply and increase driver income. Next, I will introduce the three major research objectives, ranging from understanding behaviors and optimizing operational strategies to running a pilot with potential knowledge transfer from machines to human drivers. This is an ongoing project, so I will not go into the details of methodology or results, which I haven't got yet, but strive to convey my vision and plan. Public Interest Technology, or PIT, is an initiative at UMass Amherst. What's shown here is the homepage of PIT, and the URL is included under it. Why do we need public interest technology? Technologies are widely used in today's society in many domains, areas, and sectors, and have far-reaching impacts on people's life, large and small. A few news headlines on the slide, both local and national, give some examples of such impacts, including Northampton police dash cams, cyber attack of Ludlow town hall leading to employee paychecks delayed, a man wrongly accused due to faulty facial recognition match, and security concerns raised by police departments sharing data. In a word, our society deserves technology that serves the common good. PIT focuses on the development and realization of socially responsible solutions to the challenges of technology-driven world. It serves as a critical foundation for 21st century education for people who create technologies and for those who work with them, which is basically all of us. It is an all-campus initiative striving to reach all students, all majors, and all colleges, schools. It has 3 pillars: tech literacy, social literacy, and public interest tech thinking. Tech literacy concerns how to design, implement, and use tech to promote the common good. Social literacy concerns how to manage, regulate, and assess tech to promote common good. Public interest tech thinking concerns how to address problems in ways that involve the responsible use of tech. PIT at UMass has multiple interconnected components spanning from formal and informal education, research, and outreach. I will introduce 2 major components in the next few slides. The Faculty Fellow Program aims to build community and content. In its first year, the focus is on PIT course content, with fellows designing new quizzes or incorporating PIT elements in existing quizzes. In its second year, which is ongoing right now, the focus is on interdisciplinary, socially responsible research. The plan for the third year as of now is to focus on capstones and experiential learning. Here is a list of current PIT fellows and their research subjects. As we can see, the fellows come from computer science, education, nursing, social and behavioral science, engineering, and fine arts, with a wide range of interesting projects. Faculty fellows present their research and get feedback from other fellows who are most times not even in their general area. Remember, we have people from fine arts. Such a setting is inspired by the Harvard Radcliffe Institute, and having participated in all the talks except one, I can attest to the excitement of hearing about and trying to understand research in very different areas, the challenge of giving a relevant presentation, as well as the refreshing angles of looking at the problems provided by other fellows. There's also a new Gen Ed course that introduces students to public interest tech and undergraduate certificate program administered by the IT minor. And in terms of leadership, includes Fran Berman, the director, who generously shared the slides I just used to introduce PIT. Okay, now let me switch gear and introduce my own research project in the spirit of PIT. As the project title suggests, the aim is to build an efficient and scalable decision support system packaged in an app that helps ride-sourcing drivers work cooperatively. By ride-sourcing, I mean Uber and Lyft, and I think we're all familiar with them. The word cooperative warrants some explanation. So in its most common use, a cooperative is a firm, business, or other organization which is owned and run jointly by its members who share the profits or benefits. For those of you who are outdoor fans, you might know that REI is a cooperative, and each year as a member, I get dividends. In my research project, I use the word loosely to indicate the collaborative relationship my proposed technology aims to foster and maintain. So, however, I do not stipulate whether the organization that uses the technology is a business owned by its members in the traditional sense of a co-op, or more like a union, which organizes drivers who work for Uber, Lyft, or other ride-sourcing platforms, but do not own the business. In fact, I envision that it can be used by drivers in both or any other forms of ride-sourcing market structure that might emerge in the future, such as a publicly owned ride-sourcing platform, or a platform merely as an intermediary for drivers and passengers to meet without the pricing power. Obviously, customizations are needed in different organizational structures, but they share some fundamental aspects. So the idea is that I use the term co-op in a very loose way, just to indicate that I would like to have a way to organize drivers. Okay, so why do I want to work on COOP? The emergence of ride sourcing platforms such as Uber and Lyft disrupts the transportation sector by linking passengers with ordinary car owners, drivers via smartphone apps. So as cities and states grapple with their impacts on the taxi industry, transit ridership, and traffic congestion and emissions, issues of driver rights and protection have been on national headlines. New York City and Seattle set a minimum wage in 2018 and 2020, respectively, and the risk drivers put themselves in during the pandemic justified New York City's raise of the minimum wage in 2022. The most contentious issue, however, is whether to classify drivers as employees or independent contractors. With ongoing legislative battles in California since 2019, gig platforms, including delivery counterparts such as DoorDash and Instacart, poured a historical $200 million into the campaign to pass Proposition 22 in 2020, a California ballot measure that keeps gig drivers as independent contractors. It was ruled by the state Supreme Court justice as unconstitutional in 2021, which gig platforms are appealing. A similar measure was proposed in Massachusetts, for which the proponent raised close to $18 million, while the opponent is a much lower sum of $1 million. The year before last, in June 2022, the state Supreme Court threw the measure off the November ballot. However, anyone who is watching can tell this is not the end of this battle. The diffusive nature of the gig workforce, which makes organization and collective action difficult, is also highlighted by the stark contrast between the amount of money gig platforms and workers are able to pour into campaigns. For the same reason, the resurgence of labor organization, notably the formation of the first union of Amazon employees in Staten Island, has seen little repercussions on the gig workforce, whose strike attempts have been ineffective over the years. Collective action might not be of high priority on some drivers' mind, especially for part-time ones, since the other side of the coin, flexibility and independence, is often cited as one of the top reasons for joining the gig workforce. Some surveys, one of them shown here from Pew Research Center, show that a majority of drivers would like to remain as independent contractor, in line with the public opinion. On this page, we have a news headline showing that independent truck driver blockade of the port of Oakland in July 2022. These drivers actually would like to remain as independent contractors and not happy about California's the state legislators' effort to classify them as employees. The key point, though, is that drivers are heterogeneous as passengers. Its counterpart in the two-sided ride sourcing market in terms of their needs and behaviors. A driver-centered co-op, whether it owns the business or more like a union, can provide the advantage of cooperation for those who are willing to join and share. It has the potential to strike a balance between worker independence and effective organization, and there's an independent, an important bottom-up measure to achieve an efficient and a fair ride sourcing market, and a valuable addition to the ecosystem of regulations, policies, activist organizations, and informal driver forum that are shaping the market. A co-op is a natural idea actually for drivers who feel exploited by platforms. And indeed, early stage startups have appeared. The drivers cooperative has been in operation since May 2021 in NYC as a competitor to established platforms. However, it faces the hurdle of any new entrants to the ride sourcing market, lack of capital, technical prowess, or driver pool. It's also the other type of co-op without ownership. For example, driver's seat, another startup operating primarily in Denver, Los Angeles, and Portland, Oregon, focuses on tabulating and presenting drivers' operation and earning data to help them understand their performance, and does not compete with existing platforms. In both cases, and for any co-ops that might appear in the future, a major challenge is how to sustain an organic growth. This project aims to address this challenge by generating behavioral insights and algorithmic tools using longitudinal data from a pilot, hence named COOP. Drivers share passive location and operation data and receive optimized and coordinated guidance on tactical and operational decisions to maximize their welfare. Transportation agencies and local communities could partner with COOP to gain insights into the ride sourcing market using data provided directly by drivers and optimize policies to meet societal goals. Now I will use an analytical equilibrium model, here I go a little bit more technical, of the ride sourcing market to demonstrate the benefit of COOP. So why do we want to organize? In a stylish fashion, so obviously with many simplifications to make the model easy to understand. So let's assume for now that regulations such as those setting minimum wage are not present. There are three major players in the market. The platform, and here it says ride hailing. Again, there's no a single term. People call it ride sharing, ride hailing, ride sourcing, referring to similar things. So there are the three major players, the platform, the passengers, and the drivers. And the drivers can either be acting independently, which is what they do right now, or cooperatively, which is what I envision they can do with a technology like COOP. So I'll state the conclusion first, in case I would skip some of the actual analysis. The conclusion is that it is shown that COOP leads to smaller supply and larger earnings for drivers, providing a potentially sustainable and fair alternative to curbing oversupply. So we know oversupply is a problem that is not in the nature of the platform to solve due to its not bearing vehicle ownership and operating costs. So for platforms to take commission from the services, their revenue directly depends on the total volume of service. So they're not necessarily concerned with oversupply that could produce congestion and emission and other externalities. Not to mention, actually reducing drivers' income due to excessive competition. So next, I quickly go over the model setup. In the first problem, P1 for the platform. So don't worry about the symbols or letters. The idea is here to state major decision variables for each player. So in the first problem for the platform maximized its profit by determining the price charged to passengers and wage paid out to drivers for hired hours. Note that drivers are paid only for hired hours, not all operating hours. In the second problem, P2 for passengers, a passenger decides to take a ride sourcing trip if its cost is lower than the reservation cost, usually defined as the cost of an alternative mode, for example, transit or driving. Assuming a uniform distribution of the reservation cost and demand can be written in an analytical form shown here. Again, don't worry about the details, but it accounts for the fact that the ride cost depends on the waiting time, which in turn depends on the demand-supply imbalance. In the third problem for drivers, COOP represents the interests of all its members, and maximizes the net earnings by determining labor participation level. That is, how many driver hours to put in the market. Drivers earn wages when carrying a passenger, but incur operating costs as long as in operation. An effective wage, therefore, is the net income per operating hour. The three groups of players interact with one another in that each of their optimization problems use inputs determined by other players' actions. The price, wage, effective wage, supply, and demand are all endogenous and solutions of the market equilibrium problem, achieved when all three problems are solved simultaneously. The optimality condition of COOP's problem, the drivers' union or cooperatives problem, says that more drivers should join the workforce if the marginal effective wage is larger than the reservation wage. Reservation wage is basically the wage you can earn if you're not working for this platform, but from other income sources. And they should stop when the two become equal. Right? So the wage has a complicated relationship with supply due to the interplay among the three agents of the market. So roughly speaking, when the demand and supply are small, more drivers result in lower waiting time for passengers, and thus higher demand. So more passengers will be attracted to the service and therefore more earnings. But as the supply grows, the gain from more demand is increasingly outweighed by the loss from more empty hours due to competition. In the base case, so we compare the COOP case with the base case. In the base case, where drivers are non-cooperative individuals, each makes the labor participation decision separately. That is, an individual driver will decide to participate if its effective wage is higher than the reservation wage. And note this is different from the COOP problem, where we have the marginal. When you see a derivative, you're talking about marginal. We have the marginal effective wage is used for COOP, but in the base case, it's just the effective wage itself. And it can be proved that COOP leads to a smaller supply and higher driver income than in the base case where drivers are not cooperating. In other words, COOP naturally curbs oversupply. Note that this conclusion is drawn when we assume that drivers have perfect knowledge of the wage in an equilibrium setting. In the real world, where new drivers are attracted to the market by usually inflated wage promises, the oversupply problem could be even more serious, and therefore COOP could be more useful. So compared to other measures to curb oversupply, whether in the literature or in the real world, which are always almost like regulatory, such as putting a cap on the total number of ride sourcing cars, or a cruising cap, basically trying to put a cap on how much cruising the fleet can do. These regulatory measures usually are susceptible to challenges by platforms, as shown in one of the news headlines here. A challenged cruising cap in New York City. So the COOP actually can naturally do that. The previous example illustrates a critical advantage of COOP given certain supply assumptions. The equilibrium framework is conducive to theoretical analysis for policy evaluations, but at operational level, the dynamics of learning cannot be ignored. The ride sourcing labor force is notable for its low retention rate, ranging from 4% to 20% per year in various studies. And so we see a picture where a majority of drivers constantly climbing a steep learning curve. So in this sense, COOP is valuable, even just for the sharing of information without optimization. And so in the study, we're going to be built on a learning framework. Okay, so now next I will talk in a bit more detail of the research objectives. They are conceived based on two important features that I think an organic growth needs in the current market environment, where there are already two major platforms. So at this point, I'd like to actually go back to an example we looked at earlier, the New York City drivers COOP, which is a co-op in its traditional sense, in that drivers own the enterprise. Their 2023 annual report from the website shows a growth plan where in phase one, they tackle a defensible niche market of pre-scheduled transportation. And as their website indicates, that includes paratransit and non-emergency medical transportation. Phase two is the rideshare ride sourcing service we are familiar with, which takes on-demand trip requests and match drivers to passengers in real time. Earlier last year, they announced the launch of their rideshare app, an indication of their starting phase two. However, towards the end of last year, the web page actually reverted back to what we see now to emphasize just phase one services. So it's not surprising that it's difficult to get started in the market when there are already two giants present. It might be a good idea to first organize drivers within the current platform structure before taking ownership. That is, focus on the operation side before going into the customer side. So on the operation side, the decision process we model and optimize is called the SRA decisions. So S stands for scheduling, when to work and how long. R stands for routing, also known as repositioning. That is where to find the next passengers. A stands for order acceptance. Dropping out of the platform is implicitly included in the scheduling decision when one decides to not work at all or 0 hours. So my research objectives are thus built around answering the question, how to attract and grow COOP. Note that with COOP, drivers work for existing platforms and are paid according to their rules. COOP collects data from members and provide operational guidance, but do not set price or receive passenger trip requests directly. So I focus on two features that I think are important for the growth of COOP. First, COOP needs to be adaptive to data availability. That is, working mainly with publicly available data at the beginning and striving to create value for drivers with minimum amount of trajectory data. Later on, when more drivers join COOP and thus more high-resolution trajectory data are available, the technology can be more data-driven and customized to individual needs. Two, the technology needs to transfer knowledge from machine to human so that drivers not only follow guidance, but also learn. This requires first understanding how drivers learn and choose, and then designing behaviorally informed guidance to help them learn. So with these two features in mind, there are three major research objectives in this project: understand how drivers learn and make decisions, optimize how machines learn, and more importantly, find how the machine learned knowledge can be transferred to and internalized by drivers to help sustain an organic growth of COOP. So the architecture of COOP is shown in this figure on the right. So it starts with publicly available demand and supply data that are generally of low temporal and spatial resolution. For example, the annual rideshare data report prepared by the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, based on which some aggregate right sourcing demand supply models are developed and calibrated. Publicly available demographic and land use data that are of much higher spatial resolution are then used to estimate demand at a spatial resolution adequate for operation level guidance, generated by model-based optimization methods, and provided to COOP members drivers, which in turn generate high quality trajectories and operational data. The data are then used in a number of different ways, as indicated by the arrow pointing to the dashed box that includes 3 components. The data are used to enhance the aggregate demand model to serve as a target of driver learning and choice model, and to train model-free optimization methods. The loop is then closed when, again, more refined guidance generated by behaviorally informed optimization methods that account for drivers' behaviors and consider the acceptance likelihood of guidance. The guidance is updated as drivers act on it and generate more data, and the loop continues. Okay, so I am actually going to skip the like 3 slides, which goes a little bit more detail into the 3 tasks, but I think we're at a time that we probably should get questions instead of me presenting more. So happy to share more details offline if you're interested, and thank you for your attention. Happy to take questions.
All right, so thank you, Dr. Gao. I'd encourage people to use the Q&A feature at the bottom. So I'll jump us off here. So I was just looking through their website. It looks like they've recently expanded to Denver. Do you think there's a specific type of geography that a system like this would work better in, or could this work everywhere?
So first of all, yes, I'm also glad to see that it's extending to Denver, and there's a lot of organization activities going on. Well, in general, ride sharing or ride sourcing work better in, large, dense urban areas where it's easier to get customers, and drivers would be attracted to those large, dense areas. But I don't see why it cannot be also applied to rural areas. If there is some niche market, I think even in Amherst, in the Western Massachusetts, even though it's generally it's a rural area, but in some pockets of it, like Amherst or some other college towns, there are actually pretty good demand out there. So I think large or small, if there is enough demand out there, it can definitely work. Hopefully.
Okay. I got another one for you. Is there anything to stop the drivers from, driving for COOP, but also driving for Uber and or Lyft?
Nothing.
No? Okay.
No. Well, yeah, I mean, it really depends on how they want to organize it. Again, I'm an academic. I'm not going to actually do this myself, but I'm happy to, my goal is really to provide technology that could help them do this if they want. If they decide that they want to be exclusive with their drivers, they can. I mean, but I don't think that's to their benefit.
Okay.
Especially, I think at the beginning, the early age, when I envisioned that it's very hard to have your own platform completely by yourself, as indicated by the New York City ones. It's very hard for them to compete with the existing 2 giants in the market. So I think first, just to sort of make it more like a union to work with drivers, but following the rules of high prices of Uber and Lyft, but just working more efficiently. I think that's the starting point.
Is the way that they're able to compete due to taking a smaller commission from the drivers? Like from a rider's perspective, I'm going to pick the cheapest one typically. So I guess they're paying drivers more. Does that translate to charging more to the rider, or?
So is your question like, why would COOP, if it's like a business by itself, can compete with
Yeah, I guess.
existing business model of like Uber and Lyft? That's a good question. I have to first confess that most of my thoughts for so far has been on like organizers as a union, so not really competing with Uber and Lyft. It's because I know it's very hard. So, but
Yeah, I was just
I don't see any obvious advantage except that if you can somehow grow it in a way, let's see like how Lyft grows to be, a sizable competitor to Uber.
Yeah, I mean their
How to
revenue's
have that
going up,
critical
so
mass at some
something's
point.
working.
Sorry?
Their revenue has gone up, so something is working, but
Oh yeah.
let's see. We got a quiet bunch in the chat or in the Q&A. So I guess we can wrap it up there. I was texting Francis that I was having 509 flashbacks, so this was an interesting one to watch. So thank you.
Oh, is that the marginal?
Yeah, so thank you to all our participants. My email is blowing up, so look for some emails from Mike very shortly here. And then, yeah, keep an eye on our new website for our next webinar announcement and any other future events. So, Dr. Gao, thank you again, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Ko, for having me, and thank you, everybody, for your attention.